Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and today I just wanted to give a quick little video to talk about the new projects that I have coming soon to this channel, and also coming soon to the my website, baseballmaelstrom.com. You can go check it out to kind of keep updated on the projects that I have going on. So I just wrapped up my History Maker Baseball All-Time Franchise Great Tournament, and that was a lot of fun. And now that I've wrapped that up, I think I have a couple projects actually planned. One of which is a return to Payoff Pitch. So I did a my Payoff Pitch League. It's been a little while, and I wanted to return to that because I love the game and it's a lot of fun to play, and I still have some ideas for how to do it. And the premise of that league, just as a reminder, is that I have 8 teams, 4 American League and 4 National League teams, and 3 of the 4 teams are made up of Hall of Famers from that perspective league. The other team is made up of non Hall of Famers, so players that aren't in the Hall of Fame, but still they're pretty good. So you have people like, obviously Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Shoeless Joe, Pete Rose. So players that may not get into the Hall of Fame because of whatever past they have. But in addition to that, great players that just have been looked over or I should say overlooked or passed by or whatever the case may be. It could also include players that have retired but aren't quite eligible for the Hall of Fame yet. So those are the players that make up the 2 teams, 1 American League and 1 National League non-Hall of Fame team. And last year, the non-Hall of Fame American League team, the Detroit Rockets, actually won. I had a third of a season that I played, and then at the end of that, so 54 games, and then at the end of that, the best record in the American League and the best record in the National League battled each other in a World Series. I had an All-Star game halfway through, and it was, as I said, it was just a lot of fun. So now that some time has passed, I kind of want to shake up the rosters a little bit. Obviously, the non-Hall of Fame teams won't change too much because there's only so many good players to have on those teams. That being said, come January 23rd, when the new Hall of Fame class is announced, that will add more potential players to the mix for the Hall of Fame teams. So anybody that's inducted into the Hall of Fame or announced that they're going to be in the Hall of Fame will become eligible for the Hall of Fame teams. Some of those players may have been on the non-Hall of Fame teams up to this point. Likewise, we've had a couple of bigger names retire. And so the non-Hall of Fame teams, one of the stipulations is the players have to be retired. They can't be active players. So with some retirement comes more opportunity for players to be added to those teams as well. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to wait till January 23rd at least to start getting that league put into order again, so that we can do another season of the league. And I'm not sure yet. I'm probably going to do the same thing that I did last time, the same format, third of a season, no interleague play, all-star game halfway through, top 2 teams go to the World Series, that kind of thing. I'll probably still do that again, just so I have some consistency in that league. I thought about adding more teams, but really the limit is the number of Hall of Famers. So you really can only get 3 American League and 3 National League Hall of Fame teams. There aren't enough pitchers, for example, to make a 4th Hall of Fame team in each league. Now, one of the other limitations is Payoff Pitch does not have all seasons carded, for example. So they have 1921, but then there isn't another carded season until much later than that. So some of those earlier players, Christy Mathewson, some of those older players, even though they're Hall of Famers, they're just not a way to get them into the game. So that's the other limitation. But I think even if that weren't a limitation, I think we'd still be short on pitchers to form another team in each league. So that's really the limitation, is the number of pitchers available to create those Hall of Fame teams. Now I could create another team of non Hall of Famers so that there would be 3-3 or 3-2 or whatever. But again, I think the teams start getting pretty thin after a couple of teams get filled out. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick to the same format. And they were teams that I created names for, and that kind of thing as well. They weren't historical teams, obviously, because they were completely drafted, or whatever you want to call it. So the Detroit Rockets, and so I'll probably still have the same team names and that kind of thing. Again, I've thought about adding some cities and other team names to the mix, but again, there's just not enough players, I don't think, to fill those out. So that's one of my projects. The second project is going to be that I plan on running at about the same time. So I'm going to have two projects going at once. And the second project is going to be a new game for me, and it's going to be Season Ticket Baseball. I did a lot of research, looked at different games, and with the Black Friday sales that were going on, I think the PDFs were 30% off. So I was able to pick up a lot of the PDFs of the to do what I want to do with that particular project. I also picked up some inside pitch seasons, but not enough to do any bigger projects that I'm planning on doing. I don't really. Commissioner Dugan and I were talking actually this past weekend about it, and both of us are kind of similar in the sense that just straight replays don't really interest us that much. It's the what ifs and that kind of thing that really excite me and interest me. So that's why you won't see like just a straight season replay from me. And I try to do, some what if scenarios and that kind of thing more so. But what I'm planning on doing for Season Ticket Baseball is doing a best of the decades tournament. Pretty sure it's going to be a tournament and not just a season or a shortened season. Not sure how exactly yet the tournament is going to be set up. So you could be watching for that, but it's going to be a best of tournament. So the way I have it set up right now, it's going to be 5 American League, 5 National League teams from a particular decade, the 5 best, with no duplicate franchises, which means you're not going to have 4 Yankees teams in the same best of the decades tournament. You're going to have just one Yankees team, for example. So that'll give some more variety, I think, so that we don't have some teams that really dominated a decade being represented multiple times. And I guess so I'm going to have, as I said, some kind of tournament bracket, 5 AL, 5 NL teams, and then the winners of each, or the winners of the American League bracket, the winner of the National League bracket will face off in a World Series type to determine the best team of the decade. And I put it up for a vote, and so far, and again, this is based on the seasons that I have, it looks like it's going to be the 1930s is going to be the first decade that we're going to look at. A lot of great teams, a lot of great players, and so I'm really interested to not only check out Season Ticket Baseball, a new game, but also just take a deeper look at the 1930s and some of those great players and teams from the 1930s. So I'll that's kind of the overview, and I'm going to show you, because you may be wondering, how did you choose the top 5 AL and top 5 NL teams? You may be wondering that, and so I'm going to show you how I came upon that, or came across that idea. So let's take a look at that. So I looked all over for a good, a good source for the top teams of the decades and that kind of thing. And I really, the sad thing is, there's all of this subjective opinion, of course, on what the top teams are, and very little statistical analysis to back it up, I guess. And then I found this site Actually, 538 is, I think, I don't think this site's 538 is being updated anymore. Yeah, it's archived and no longer updated. They're now on abcnews.com/538. But there's this article from 2016 about the best MLB teams of all time according to a rating system called, and again, it's a last name. I think it's ELO or ALO, and it's used in chess actually to rate players and that kind of thing. And what the system does is it takes it's almost like a strength of schedule. It the teams gain in the rating when they win games, and they lose in the rating when they lose games, which makes sense. But it's also based on their margin of victory and some other stuff, and the strength of the team that they're playing and that kind of thing. And then what happens is they assign those points throughout an entire season, and then they take those points and create a rating system out of those points. And so this site kind of does that. And the number one team of all time, according to the system, surprisingly enough, is the 1939 New York Yankees. So there's a peak rating, which means the highest rating they ever had during the season. They have an average rating, so it's their average rating over the course of a whole season. Their end rating, what was their rating at the very end of the season. And then they have a composite rating that is kind of a combination of all three. And so I'm going by the composite rating to determine the top teams to include in the all decades tournament, if you will. So every team is ranked. This is a very less subjective way of determining what teams to include. And so I strictly went by the top 5 National League franchises in the 1930s and the top 5 American League franchise seasons in the 1930s. So obviously the 1930s is a great starting decade because it has the number one team according to this rating, the 1939 Yankees. And so we'll get to see them compete along with 9 other teams. And so you can search through here by team name. You can search by decade. So what I did is I typed in 19193 to get 1930. And you can see the top 4 teams are all Yankees teams. 1932, 37, 38, and 39. So it's a good thing that I'm not using just the top 5 American League and top 5 National League teams, but I'm actually going deeper than that. So only the 39 Yankees are going to be included in the 1930s tournament, for example. But anyway, this just kind of, again, gives me an objective rating system to use. And again, one could argue whether this system is good or that kind of thing. But what it does is it gives me an objective system to use where I'm not trying to compile based on websites. I'm not going strictly based on winning percentage and all of that kind of thing. And it should be, I mean, the teams that are going to be included should be pretty great teams if they're the tops of this rating. So that's what I'm using. Again, I think arguments could be made about other systems, but this was the only one that I could find that was really statistically based, objective, and also rates teams against teams from different eras. That's the other thing. So you can't just go by straight winning percentage because, the 19 whatever, you could have a team from the early 1900s and they had a great winning percentage, but maybe they're really not as great as one of the later teams. So this kind of equalizes all of that, I think. So what teams are included? Let's take a look at the teams that are included. We have, in order of year, 1931 Philadelphia Athletics, the 1931 St. Louis Cardinals. I guess I should go by American and National League, right? So in the American League, 1931 Philadelphia Athletics, the 1933 Washington Nationals or Senators, whatever you want to call them, the 1935 Detroit Tigers, the 1939 New York Yankees and the 1939 Boston Red Sox. And in the National League, we have the 1931 St. Louis Cardinals, the 1934 New York Giants, the 1935 Chicago Cubs, the 1938 Pittsburgh Pirates, and the 1939 Cincinnati Reds. Those are the teams I'm using, top 5 teams in each league. And this is the next project I'm going to start using season ticket baseball. So I'm going to try that system out, see how it is. My long-term goal, if that works out well, is to do this with different decades. So that's kind of the long-term goal. If we'll see how this one goes. If this one goes well, then I'm going to probably pick a later era team, maybe the 1980s or 1990s decade. And then, start hitting decades in between. And if I do 10 decades, that'll give me, if the 10 winners from each of the decades could compete in another 10-team tournament of some kind. Though we would probably have a chance that the same franchise would win multiple decades, and I haven't really decided how I'm going to handle that. But for now, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because that's an ambitious project to do best team of the decades for 10 decades. That's a very ambitious project. Let's just start with one and see how it goes. And the one we're going to start with is the 1930s, as I said. So that's kind of what we're going to do. I will leave a link if you want to check out this listing, if you're curious to see how teams are ranked. By the way, the number 2 team is the 1906 Chicago Cubs. And then the 27 Yankees are number 3. Interesting list. So, with all this said, hopefully something in there interests you. And I'll continue to post, about the projects and my progress on the projects. I'm also planning on redoing my MLB play-by-play data statistical breakdowns on out distribution and where balls are hit and that kind of thing using the 2023 season. Remember, I did a whole series on out distribution, runner advancement, where balls are hit for the 2022 season. However, the shift was heavily in effect for the 2022 season. And with the changes in 2023, reducing the ability to have shifts, I'm curious to revisit those, the distribution, and see how it's changed. Because again, I find that fascinating to kind of dig into that a little bit. So I plan on doing that still too. And then random miscellaneous baseball related stuff that I'll post here or there too. So even if you're not interested in the Payoff Pitch League that's coming up or the season ticket baseball best of the decades, you can still tune in for the other content that I'm going to be putting out. With all that said, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're most excited about, if anything, or least excited about, if that's the case. And I thank you so much for watching. And until next time, have a great evening.